welcome. Thank you very much for anybody that's watching now and anybody that's watching the recording. It's very much appreciated. We're going to be exploring happiness today. I'm going to quickly run down what we're going to be covering. I'm going to introduce myself, then I'm going to introduce my the guest I'm delighted to have, Petero. We're then going to just have a quick session on what is happiness. We're then going to talk about some happiness myths that tend to get in people's ways. We're going to talk about some psychological modulators that help people reduce stress, which is tied in with happiness. We're going to then come up with some ideas of if we were coaching somebody, what we might advise them to move to a happier life. And then we're going to sum up. If you've got any questions, please write them into the writing stream for this LinkedIn thing, and we will answer them later. Okay, so thank you for that. So first thing I'm going to say literally a few words for myself, and I hope Petero says a lot more about him when we come to him. So I'm Michael Beale. I'm a one-to-one NLP trainer, and I'm a one-to-one Marshall Goldsmith stakeholder leader and team coach. I work with a small number of people around the world, and if I had any claim to fame, it's that my clients are interesting people. And Petero is one of those people that I've worked with. He very kindly invited me over to Uganda about 10 years ago, and we stayed in touch ever since. And one of the things he's been studying is happiness. So I'm really delighted to have him here on this session. So Petero, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Michael. My name is Petero Wamala. I'm based in Kampala, Uganda. For over 30 years, I was an entrepreneur in the petroleum sector in Uganda and still am invested in that sector. But in the last 3 years, I have transitioned to doctoral research in the areas of urban mobility and happiness. And I'm trying to find out how we can make the world a happier place all around. Thank you.
I love it. So so there is something else actually I'll say about this. Why am I particularly interested in happiness? Because when I'm working with clients, I like to help them set their direction for their lives. I'm really interested to make sure that that they're moving in a direction that leads to genuine fulfillment and happiness and success. So to me, although it's not something I major on when I coach people, it's something that's very important for me to have in the back of my mind. So Petero, first question, what is happiness?
Well, happiness is a concept that is not so easy to define because first, you must differentiate between pleasure and happiness. You must also differentiate between good feelings and happiness. For example, smiling and laughing are signs of happiness, but they are not happiness in themselves. So, what is happiness? So, happiness is that inner feeling within you of contentment, of having hope, of looking forward to better days and appreciating what you have at that moment in the time.
Excellent. And one of the things I'm really pleased to have you here to talk about it today is, as in my view, we're moving towards a slightly more chaotic world, mix of AI, geopolitical stuff, more challenging clients, that we are entering possibly a period of chaos. Actually looking at things like happiness and purpose actually become more important because they help us do all the other things. So the first thing we're going to explore is some myths about happiness, and these myths are sort of what I call unuseful beliefs that tend to move people away from happiness rather than towards it. So first one, happiness is a destination you reach out for. So Petero, why do you think this is a myth, and what's so important about it?
Well, happiness is a destination, is something we have all had. I will be happy when. I'll be happy when I get the big house. I'll be happy when I get a promotion. I'll be happy when I get that so and so as my spouse. And it doesn't work. As you know, anybody who has been married, the courtship eventually turns out to have been much better than the actual marriage. So we ought to enjoy the journey rather than look at the ultimate destination. Instead of asking, what will make me happier tomorrow, we should ask, what am I enjoying today? What can I be grateful for today? What can I appreciate in the things that are happening positively for me today? So the question of I'll be happy when something happens really derails all of us.
No, I think that's fascinating too. And I also think it's fascinating that most of the self-help stuff is all about the future. And there's a sort of balance in here, because I think it's absolutely essential. We do have a purpose, which we'll talk about later, and we do know which direction we're going to, but it's bringing us back to enjoying the moment and not forgetting the moment, because life is sort of the moment. Okay, the next one, external factors dictate your happiness. What's your view on that?
Well, it is true that external factors do have an influence on your happiness. But what is within our control, genetics probably accounts for about 50% of your happiness. So your mother, your father passes to you a certain happiness set point. Even that one is not cast in stone, because modern science shows through neuroplasticity that the brain can change. Therefore, we can train our brain through meditation, through mindfulness practices to become happier. So when we take our attitude, and irrespective of the circumstances, you see, two people can face the same adverse circumstance, but one will remain neutral, one will become totally depressed. So we'll talk about later the psychological modulators, but happiness is to an extent a choice. It is not what happens to you. It is how you react to what happens to you that actually matters. And that is what determines your happiness.
I think that's such an important point. Of course, it's easy to say and less easy to do. But I think it's an important point. And actually, I'm actually going to build on that. It's not necessarily easy, but I have been surprised and delighted. Some people I've worked with over 6 months or a year, how sometimes because we're all wanting quick change, but actually doing a little bit of stuff every day and practicing stuff and using our brains in a slightly different way over time makes a significant difference. Some people can do it very quickly, but I've always impressed with people that have found it hard, but they've stuck to it and they've got results over time. Okay, next myth. Happiness means constant. I can't even speak. Happiness means constant positivity.
Well, constant positivity is actually called toxic positivity. Because if you are too much of anything is always bad. And resilience, that is overcoming of negative circumstances or situations, is actually one of the sources of happiness. Because if you have never experienced the cold, how can you appreciate the warmth? If you have never gone hungry, how can you appreciate that your stomach is full? So it is necessary to have a rounded life for us to experience all aspects of the real world. And if you are a human being, you cannot be happy all the time. What is required is the resilience to make sure that you are able to handle the bad situations, do not get depressed, and so forth, as the good times also come. So you cannot be happy all the time. It is, as it said.
No, I like that. I don't like it, but I absolutely agree with it. And in my NLP stuff, when we're looking at emotional states, to me it's very nice to say you click your hands and you go from one emotional state to another, and sometimes that happens. But life is a bit like a sea, and there are storms, and sometimes the art is to ride the storms, or the skill is to ride the storms and take some meaning out of the storms. But thanks for that. Let's go on to the next point. Happiness is predetermined. You either have it or you don't.
Well, no. As I said previously, genetics determines a great percentage of our happiness set point, probably 40 to 50%. But we have a lot to do with the remaining 40%. 10% is determined by the environment in which you are. I mean, if you are born in a place where there are wars, where there is civil disobedience, where there are all these types of things, they affect your happiness. But within the rhythm that we can control, there's so much more that we can do with it. Secondly, even the genetic set point is not cast in steel, because as neuroplasticity shows, we can train our brain through mindfulness to increase our happiness set point. So happiness is not a given. It's not that you have it or you don't. No, but increasingly, it is a choice, and we can train ourselves to be.
Okay, excellent. Now, building on that, you talked about genetics. How important do you think early childhood is, and the care and support we get in early childhood to develop happiness later? Or how much harm? Let me ask both questions. How can it help? How can it harm? And how important is it?
Well, I think early childhood is very, very, very important. For example, the Father Christmas myth persists because it gives people hope. It gives children something to look forward to, and it also shows them that it's not up to them. Somebody on Sugar Candy Mountain is looking up to them to give them presents. They don't have to do anything, because daddy punishes them, mommy punishes them, or rewards them for specific things. But Father Christmas is, the universe rewarding them. And this creates positive affect in the children. This gives them more of a positive orientation to life. They have something to look forward to. So it's like the tendency to throw tantrums and so forth, or even when there is actual unhappiness in the communities where they live, they look at the bigger universe, because the universe, at least once in a year, delivers prizes through Father Christmas. So early childhood is all important.
But sorry, I'm going to be cheeky now, because I wasn't quite sure which side of the fence you were coming. Is Father Christmas a good thing or a less good thing? I'm only being fatuous, but I'm just interested. I'm interested in your response.
Well, Father Christmas, first of all, Father Christmas. But it does not mean that because it is a myth, it is not useful. Some things are myths, but they are useful. For example, when I was young, my mother used to tell me that when you go outside, there is an animal. Outside in the night, there is an animal, it will harm you. There was no animal outside, but she meant well to protect me in case I fall in a ditch or something outside the home. So the myth was useful. It protected me from harm.
Okay, so we've talked about the happiness myths, and I say sometimes it's useful to clear them out the way, because they just get in our way, and they get us to do they may get us to do the wrong things. We're going to explore now what I call the six psychological, I can't even speak, 6 psychological modulators, and these have been deemed to reduce stress. And while some stress is really useful, because excitement is really useful, too much stress just drains us, and there's all sorts of things that mean that we aren't able to be as we aren't able to be as capable as we otherwise would be, and sometimes being capable is what leads us to happiness. So I think these are very important. Now, what's interesting, before I started my becoming an NLP trainer, I sort of took these to heart, and I built them into the approach that I work with people, because I think some of the principles here are very important. But I'm interested to take your view, because I say I didn't come at it from a happiness point of view, but I think they lead to happiness, and they are some of the things that it's worth considering. So the first one is social support. Having family connections and a wider series of connections is a lot more important. And actually, as I get to this stage of my life, and I do my Marshall Goldsmith coaching, which is really about developing relationships with stakeholders and things, I now wish I had spent a lot more time on it when I was younger. But from your point of view, Patera, how important is social support?
Well, I think that, first of all, the psychological modulators in general are it's like when you go to the garden and you want to plant, it's like fertilizing the soil.
I like that.
This is what gives the person resilience to whatever the environment brings to them. So social connection is very important. In fact, research shows that the number one predictor of happiness is relationships. It is not money, it is not anything, it is the relationships that you have. In fact, when people were asked on their deathbed, what is their number one regret, they did not say, I wish I had made more money, I wish I had spent more time at the office. Said, I wish I had spent more time with the loved ones. I wish I had visited my mother more. I wished I had spent more time with my family. So social connection is number one. It reduces stress, and it creates cohesion, and it gives people confidence, and therefore makes them much
I like
happier.
that. I'm going to just add one more. It also gives an opportunity for learning. The connections you have, because in this rather strange world we are going to be living in, having connections with people that have learned how to survive and thrive and are open and honest and straight is hugely useful. So I'll add that on. The other point I made that you stimulated my thinking on this, Patera, is one of the things I think is important in life is on a daily basis choosing what we do with our focus, our time, and our energy. Sometimes I think these are the resources we have in life. And that's why I find this so useful, what you're saying so useful, because we ought to, sorry, I'm talking to me, maybe you're doing it, but it's a reminder that I ought to be investing my time in building, maintaining relationships. And it's dangerous to assume they look after themselves. That's my learning. But thanks for that. Let's move on to the next one, because I find this one quite fascinating, especially as we're moving into what I think are going to be quite chaotic times. A sense of control. How important do you think a sense of control is as far as happiness goes?
Well, human beings crave stability. They want to think that they know, they have an idea of the path that they are going through. That is why cultural rituals have become very important, because they give a sense of stability. That is why architecture, you walk into a city and you see the old buildings that were there 20 years ago, you relate. That is the only reason why that is your home, because the architecture has remained the same. So a sense of control in the sense that there is something you can expect. There's something you can expect when you die. 999, the police is going to come. Essentially, what you can expect from society when you fall sick, what you can expect from your relations, mostly in terms of adversity. Otherwise, then there is despair. Then there is hopelessness, which then, if there is no hope, if there is no idea of a sense of control, then people relapse into depression. They say nothing can be predicted, nothing can be controlled. Therefore, what can I do as an individual?
No, I think that's really good, and I'm going to link it back to what I said before. 3 of the things I like to work on with people, I like to emphasize with people, is what we do with our time, energy, and focus, because to some extent they are under our control. Now, believe it or not, some people have given that control away. They've given that control away to all sorts of. Yeah.
No, I would like to add that I keep saying this all the time. I like Stoic philosophy. The Stoics said that focus on what is in your control. The source of most unhappiness is trying to control what we cannot control.
Yes. Yeah.
There are some things in our control. Our attitude, our gratitude for what we have, kindness, and the things that you can control personally. But there are things outside our control. And if we focus on those, we are obviously going to end up being.
No, I like that. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which I think is connected in some way. Predictability. Obviously the future is unknown, but if we think we can't predict the future, again, we can't plan, we can't do anything. So having some belief in our ability to predict what's going to happen is really useful for all sorts of aspects of life. So, Patera, what's your thought about predictability?
No, I think it's a very, 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 very big factor. When you look at the World Happiness Report, the Scandinavian countries are ranked highest. They are ranked highest mostly because of social security and other factors. When you live in the Scandinavian countries, there are so many things that are predictable. When you turn 65, when you fall sick, when children get born, that you do not have to really worry about as an individual. So I think that takes a lot of burden away from you, and so there's less stress, and as a result, you obviously become happy.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's absolutely right. The other thing that we'll probably talk about later is it's actually building some daily routines. And I have a view is we don't want too many because that becomes a prison. But it's this balance of having enough predictability so we can enjoy the unpredictable. That actually the unpredictable becomes a real adventure. But we need the safety of the boat in the high seas. We need the safety of the boat, and
there is this paradox. On the one hand, human beings crave or want predictability. On the other hand, they want to experiment and to venture in the unknown, and they know that it is the unknown that is going to bring them growth.
Yes.
And opportunity. Now, how to balance the two? Because if you remain only in the predictable zone, you are never going to make huge progress. You are never going to make huge strides. You must venture in the unknown. You must strike out in the things that are not known to be able to strike it.
I like that. I like that. And I'm still going back to enable us to do that. We need some predictability to give us the confidence to strike out on our own, and we absolutely need to strike out our own. And I think now more than anywhere else is a time to strike out on our own. But we may talk about that one later. The next one is positive expectancy. A mug can be half full, half empty. some people will view it as half full, some people will view it as half empty. It's purely a way of looking at it. What's your view of positive expectancy?
I really positive expectancy is all about attitudes. Your attitude towards life. And let me first say something else. One of the causes of great unhappiness is thinking that the world is a fair place. And therefore, we get what we deserve. The world is a very unfair place. Now, I give you a practical example. You'll say, "Oh, that guy is this because he's a professor." Oh, okay, but why is he a professor? You see, he was very brilliant at school. Okay, what did he do to become very brilliant at school? You see, it was his genes. So, what did he do to get good genes? Blank. Some women are born very beautiful. They didn't do anything. But doors open for them everywhere just because the way they look. The world is totally unfair. Now, to get along in the world, we must first put ourselves on the pedestal. The world is unfair. What can I do in this very unfair world? Some people are born as royalty. You see, you are a prince. So what are you going to do? You could go to Harvard and so forth, but you never become like the prince. So the world is a very unfair place. And unless and until we all expect this, it is one of the reasons why happening. You go with a guy to college. You beat him in class. Before you know it, he's a top manager at one of the leading corporations. Say, how did that happen? But maybe the factory is owned by his grandfather. Now, so what are you going to do about it? So the world, I may be digressing here, but the world is a very unfair place. And a lot of unhappiness really comes from us expecting fairness from an unfair world.
Yes, actually, there's a fascinating balance here between our expectations, which we're talking about now, or this thing that we talked about before about the half full, because in essence, half full is good. So it's a fascinating one. Let me move on to the next one, which again I'm beginning to realize is very important. Meaning, purpose, and spirituality.
Well, meaning and purpose is very, very important. But I begin with spirituality. You must, for happiness, have something bigger than you. Whatever you have bigger than you, some people call it God. Some people think of it as nature. Some people, whatever works for you, but you must realize that your own life is just a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. So once you realize that you only have a small role to play, then it puts you into perspective, and you can now draw inspiration. You go out into the woodland and say, oh my, these trees have been here for 80 years. So if I plant one tree today, in 50 years, even when I'm not there, this tree will be like that. It's inspiration because the shade you are enjoying, the trees whose shade you are enjoying, you are not the one who planted it. So in a way, it is having a bigger power is taking selfishness from you, because we all tend to say that now I'm 50, if I plant trees in 20 years, will I be around? The shade you are enjoying, are you the one who planted it? So having a higher power, having something bigger than you. Then meaning, of course, is my view is that overall, the meaning to life is what you yourself decide.
I like that.
What life is going to mean. What life is going to do. Because the emotional speakers have made it that They make it look like your purpose is outside there and you must search for it, and by magic you hit upon it, and if you never come across it, then you are finished. But you can decide what your meaning is, and your meaning may not even be cast in stone. What your meaning was at the age of 30 probably may not be your meaning at the age of 60.
Yeah.
So can revolve, but once you have defined that meaning for you, then you find out what it's not something to write on the board or to print on your visiting card. It is now a compass to enable you to move towards a certain direction.
I like it, and I like the idea of a compass too. And whatever you want to call it, having a North Star or North Stars.
Yes.
So I liken it like if you're flying a plane, you need to put it in the sat nav. You need to put where you're going. You don't need too much detail, but you need a direction. Thank you for that. The last one of these modulators, and I'm reading it here, and I must get it the right way round because I sometimes confuse myself. Dissipation, lack of coherence, or fragmentation. Now I need to say a little bit more because I always looked at dissipation positively, that we dissipated stress, which of course enabled us to relax. But this is a different sense. It's dissipation, and dissipation is things like, I'm sorry, I'm checking with my notes, is a loss of psychological coherence, such as burnout, overwhelm, or a lack of a dissociation for values or identity, and basically a misalignment. So we're actually spend all our time fighting ourselves as opposed to doing anything useful in the world. So what's your take on dissipation, lack of coherence and fragmentation?
You see, I look at the lack of coherence as meaninglessness. In other words, everything becomes meaningless. You are pushing in too many directions and are not anchored on anything. Therefore, when things go wrong, because you do not have a central tenet, you do not have values, you are probably chasing everything that will give you a coin, and things will go wrong. Therefore, to center yourself again becomes very, very, very difficult. That is why to have coherence, first of all, I think you need values, you need the North Star, and bad times will come, but as long as your values are properly aligned, the good times will also.
I like that, and I agree with that. Okay, let's move on from that now to the next bit. Was if somebody came to you and said they were unhappy, okay, how would you approach it? What might you suggest to them to nudge them into a genuinely useful direction?
Well, the first question I would ask them is what happiness represents for them. Because if for them happiness means having caviar all day long, lying at Malibu Beach every weekend, traveling first class when they travel, that is we have to define what happiness actually means to them. Having decided what happiness means to them, we then try and discuss what are actually the true pillars of happiness. Because happiness does not, you see, it's very elusive to chase happiness itself. Chasing happiness is like looking at the sun directly. It will burn you. So it will scorch your eyes. So you have to pursue happiness indirectly. You have to pursue happiness by pursuing the elements of happiness, which is spiritual well-being, physical well-being, intellectual well-being, relational well-being, and emotional well-being, with the acronym SPIRE. So once you get the SPIRE elements, then, and they are in alignment, happiness will come by itself.
Okay. Actually, you asked the question you asked right at the beginning, how do you know you're unhappy? I think is a really interesting question. I remember Richard Bandler, one of the co-founders of NLP, asked this question to somebody who was depressed. He said, how do you know you're depressed? maybe you aren't.
Yes.
And it's one of those things that's stuck into my mind. So, and it's one of the NLP things. It's how do you know? How do you know? Because if you explore how you know, one, you may find you're not. That actually you have more things
Yes.
to be happy about than unhappy, but it gives you the raw material that you might be able to change it. Or,
My point exactly. When you say you are unhappy, it's probably you have a wrong view of happiness. You have a wrong view of what you think would make you happy. In fact, I always say that what you think will make you happy will actually not make you happy. When I got on this path,
carry on.
Which I kind of get, I used to be a very busy small business owner. At that time, thinking I was having a good life, I would not have proper meals. I would have, takeaways and burgers and so forth, all types of drinks, until I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So the doctor sat me down. Fortunately for me, this doctor had lost his own father to diabetes like 2 months ago, so he was very emotionally involved. Then I realized that what I thought was bringing me happiness was actually killing me slowly.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. I should not be laughing. Thank you for saying that.
So that is the question. When you say you are unhappy, what you wish for, what you think is going to make you happy, may in reality be leading you to the grave. So be happy what you ask for. Be sure that what you are asking for, what you are craving for, will in fact bring you happiness.
That reminds me of the old saying, be careful of what you wish for. You might get it, and it might not be what you think it is. I think that's really good. Any other any other recommendations if somebody came to you saying they were because I quite like it when you almost say, I'm looking for happiness is almost the wrong question. Happiness is a side product for looking for the right things or doing things that give yourself meaning. But if somebody came to you, is there anything else you would suggest to them?
Yes. What works for me and what I think can work for many people, if you really feel very unhappy, first I think is to connect with nature. Go out into a nature park, switch off all technology, and tune with yourself. Be with yourself and listen to yourself. Talk to yourself. Meditate. 2 or 3 hours, do that maybe 2 times a week. The answers, your subconscious will give you your answers itself. You see, if you come to me, we can discuss, but I can only share my own experiences. It is only your subconscious that knows you more than you know yourself. So if you give time to your subconscious, you give it questions, and you sit silent, and you keep quiet, and give it time, the subconscious will bring back the answers.
I like that. Okay, is there anything else you want to add?
Not really. Only to say that that really, and I'm just repeating myself here. What our grandparents knew, what we term cultural wisdom, is what is now modern science is coming out to solve all these problems of stress, to solve all these problems of unhappiness. We have moved away from community living. In the part of the world where I live, we live in communities, dance together, eat together, go to the gardens together. There was no sense of loneliness. How could you be lonely? I just mentioned to you that children were brought up by the community. When I was growing up, I could not misbehave when coming from school because everybody in the community was watching out. The neighbor could even discipline me. Now that doesn't happen because the children have become individual. Therefore, the children have gone wayward. They don't listen, if I may use that or that. So, what the modern problems of loneliness, of depression, and so forth, are I think, in my view, can be solved partly if we go back to the wisdom of our ancestors.
Okay, I like that. I like that. A couple of thoughts I'll add, and this is really involved with my coaching, but there's a couple of thoughts here. One is it's why I'm so keen people set a direction and purpose, and actually take some time, even if they change it later. And there is something almost like you said, if in doubt, make it up, see if it fits. But don't say, oh, I can't do that. This is like too much like hard work. It's a sort of way to learning about yourself to do it. The other one I really like is to have some basic daily routines. And I say too many becomes a prison. So a few daily routines, sorry, I'm going to say this wrong, but it's just how it came out. A few daily routines allow you to abuse almost everything else. If you've got a few daily routines, you can get away with lots and lots of stuff. But if you haven't, then some of that stuff becomes quite dangerous. So remember with the purpose, remember some daily routines. And then I think my view is it all becomes fun, or it all becomes a lot more fun because you're exploring what you want, you're exploring how to get there, you're overcoming challenges, but you're doing it in a positive way that reinforces your purpose. And actually, the confidence comes from doing all this stuff. I know everybody wants instant confidence, and there is a way of getting instant confidence, but long-term confidence is actually about doing the right stuff and getting results. In my view. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. What I can add here is we are all very good at getting out of these placards. I want to be in better health. I want to be a better parent. I want to eat better. I want to improve my savings habits. But we need the rituals, the daily questions. What have I done today to become a better parent? What have I done today to eat a healthier diet? What have I done today to improve my savings culture? What have I done today to get in a better physical shape? And all these daily questions, answering what is your purpose or where you want to move, asked once or twice a day, and then you get appropriate responses. So you are guiding yourself. Every day you are moving step by step, step by step, step by step. And with the time, you'll probably get there because now, as I said, there's no ultimate happiness. You can only become happier than yesterday. So if you want to be a better parent, there's no ultimate good parent. You can be a better parent than you were yesterday. But what have you done today to become a better parent? What have you done today to get in better physical shape? What have you done today to save more? What have you done today to reduce on alcohol? By the way, I quit alcohol 100%. I'm not just on the drop for a year now.
I haven't quite followed you yet.
So what are you doing today, Michael, to stop taking alcohol?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to add to it. Actually, there is something about daily questions I found, because I'm a fan of daily questions, and something that I think is important. You may not get the answer you want. What have you done today to do this? But what I found with daily questions is you're slowly, like the drip thing, you're dripping the importance into your unconscious, or into our unconscious. And one of our challenges in life, there are thousands of distractions. And there are thousands of quite addictive distractions too. But by doing daily questions every day, we're very gently programming ourselves to look out for certain stuff. And It may not happen now, it may not happen in tomorrow, but if we keep doing it, as I say, just like the drip technique, eventually we'll wake up and find ourselves doing it. It's I found on some of it's a very, very curious process that if you develop habits, the answer may not be there now, but it will come. That's my experience.
Yes.
Some things come quick. It's a little bit like with my NLP stuff, that some things come very quickly. Normally because people have done a lot of work in the past and they've forgotten all the work they've done, and you need to join the dots for it to happen. But other things, it's setting the scenes. It's sort of setting the environment, setting the scene, so you are bit by bit nudging yourself in that direction. And while it may seem you're not getting there very fast at first, I've been quite amazed just how quickly then people move forward. Unfortunately, it's not done by will, which is very sad. Yes.
What I can add to the daily questions is having a buddy. You know, we are all too weak. You say, I run 1 kilometer every day. It's useful to have a buddy who will call you at 11, or if he's the neighbor, who will knock on your door, let's go and run. Or to be part of a group, like I go to the squash court 3 times a week. Now, I don't have a buddy, but if I miss twice, some people call me, look, Petero, yesterday, are you okay? Yesterday you didn't come to play, are you okay? So that sort of sets me in the mood. Therefore, we can achieve so much when we are alone. But when we get the support of others and we cross-support each other, we'll all get there faster. Here in our culture, they say that if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk with somebody else.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. In fact, I'm not going to say more than that because I think it's just so important. And I think your words cover your words cover that very much. Okay, we're coming to the end of what we wanted to cover. What are your last words? Well, if you reflect back on what we've been talking about for the last 50 minutes, what would be the 1 or 2 key thoughts you would like people to be left with?
What I would like to say is that happiness is the ultimate currency. So you ask people, you want a bigger job, a better job? Yes. So what you do? What? I get more money. You get more money, you do what? I buy a better. I buy a car, I buy a better. At the end, they want to be happy. You want to move to a different country so that you do what? At the end, happiness is the ultimate currency. So what point am I making? That sometimes it may be easier to take a detour to go straight for things that will lead you to happiness rather than take a long route chasing things that you think will bring you happiness, which ultimately will not bring you happiness.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to bring this to the end. We're a few minutes early, but I'm delighted with what we covered. I very much appreciate, Petero, what you've said and your taking your time to come here today. I will drop a note to everybody that's attended so they know, but can you just let people know your very top level contact details, just in case anybody wants to contact you?
Well, my email is, I don't know how I can, peterowamala62@gmail.com, and my phone number is +256 772988.
Okay, and you're on LinkedIn too, so I'll drop those. I'll drop those, and I'll drop your LinkedIn profile. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for listening, or everybody that's watching the recording, and thank you for coming. And I look forward to visiting you on the next one. Cheers for now.